Ghosting doesn't start with malice. It begins with an ignored message. A, "I'll reply later," and then silence. Everything's still there. The conversation, the feelings, the other person, just that you vanish. No goodbye, no reason. And the hardest part is you don't disappear because they're unworthy. You vanish because you lack the courage to voice a truth that might hurt them. And so, you choose to hurt them without leaving a trace. You're not evil, but you're not innocent either. I once stood there silently watching a conversation fade on my phone screen, my heart pounding with anxiety and despair. The last message, maybe a sincere question, an awkward show of care, or just a tiny story, lay there, lonely and abandoned, unseen, unanswered, like a whisper lost in the wind. I refreshed the chat once, then 10 times, then 100. My eyes glued to the screen with a fragile hope, waiting for the tiniest sign that they were still there, still cared. I watched the green dot by their name fade, then vanish completely, like the last light in a room dimming out, leaving me in a cold, dark silence. I remember asking myself 100 times, night after night, in those lonely hours. Did I do something wrong? Did I say something off? Am I not good enough for them to stay? Honestly, ghosting isn't something I'm proud of, but it's something I've done more than I'd like to admit. And it didn't come from malice, not because I wanted to hurt anyone, but because there were times when I genuinely didn't know what to do with my own emotions. My mind was a tangled mess, like an unraveled rug. Feelings crashed into each other like waves, and a new message became the final drop. I turned off notifications, promised I'll reply tomorrow. Then tomorrow turned to a week to a month, and eventually I didn't dare go back. Ghosting isn't a cunning plan, pre-programmed with dark intentions. It's not a deliberate, calculated act of cold betrayal that leaves you feeling deeply wounded. It happens when you freeze, a terrifying paralysis where your body and mind suddenly halt, locked in extreme fear and exhaustion. When your brain whispers in despair, "Don't reply, not ready, not strong enough to face it." When your body is so exhausted it's ready to collapse. When the pain drives you to vanish from the noisy social media chaos, from a world heavy with expectations, and from people you haven't fully understood or cherished, people whose mere thought tightens your heart with endless guilt. In that moment, everything freezes. Time halts, emotions buried under a thick layer of ice. You feel like a ghost, adrift in a vibrant world, just wanting to hide from every gaze, every question, every hope you know you can't fulfill. It's not a choice, but an instinctive reaction, a desperate self-defense mechanism. When your heart is shattering, when your spirit is so drained it lacks the strength to utter a word, the energy to explain, or the courage to face your own pain and that of others. I know on the other side of that silence there are unanswered questions, painful guesses, that feeling of being invisible, unworthy of being heard or bid farewell. But I also know that some ghost not because they want to flee someone else, but because they're running from themselves. Sometimes people vanish because they don't know how to say it right, because they don't want to hurt, because they think saying it won't change anything anyway. I used to think like that. I feared that saying I don't feel the same anymore would cause pain. I feared that saying I can't go on would lead to questions of why. And I had no neat answers. So I stayed silent, chose what I thought was the gentler way. But in truth, silence can hurt more than an awkward word. I used to lie to myself thinking, it's fine. It's just a vague relationship, nothing clear. But now I know, even if the label's unclear, the emotions are real. And those who stay with kindness, patience, they deserve an answer. Even just an honest, simple one. I'm tired. I need time. I don't know how to say it, but I can't go on. I used to think that if I stayed silent, I wasn't at fault. But now I understand. Not hurting someone doesn't mean I'm free of responsibility, because sometimes by choosing to avoid, I let the other person invent 100 reasons to feel like they're not good enough. And that's not fair. The hard part of ghosting is that it's like locking someone in a room with no key. They don't know when or if you'll return. They don't know if there's any hope left. They have to unlock the door with their imagination, and that imagination is rarely kind. I know because I've been on both sides. I once waited 17 days for someone, only to realize they'd never message back. And I've also stayed silent with someone for exactly 17 days, just because I lacked the courage to say goodbye. I'm not sharing this to justify it, I just want to admit it, that ghosting can be a sign of emotional overload, of not knowing how to communicate, of fearing rejection, misunderstanding, being labeled as bad, of growing up without learning to say no kindly, and most of all, of a heart that hasn't yet learned to take responsibility for others' feelings. But I'm learning. I'm relearning how to message despite the awkwardness. How to say, I'm sorry for going silent without feeling weak. How to say, I don't feel that way anymore, while still holding respect. And I'm learning that kindness isn't always about not hurting anyone, but about daring to be honest, even knowing it might sadden someone. Of course, there are times when ghosting is necessary, when the other person makes you anxious, when they don't listen to you, when they control, blame, or make you feel small. In those cases, silence isn't avoidance. It's a boundary, a way to protect yourself from lasting harm, and you don't need to feel guilty about it. If that person was once part of your days, offering you sincere glances, warm words, and gentle gestures, please leave something behind. It doesn't need to be elaborate or a lengthy explanation. Just a short line, a soft phrase, or even a quiet dot will do. Let them know your departure isn't because they weren't good enough, loving enough, or whole enough. It's just that, deep in your soul, you're still healing wounds, learning to love yourself, and striving to become a better version. A small word is enough to spare them guilt or self-blame, to show you still cherish the moments you shared, even as you need time to find yourself again. That's it. Not everyone who ghosts is bad. Not everyone ghosted is pitiful. We're all just trying to understand ourselves. And sometimes hurting others happens along that journey. What matters is whether you stop, turn back, and learn to do it differently. If you see yourself in this story, whether you've ghosted or been left behind, share something, a thought, something you never dared to say, or just comment, I understand, so I know you're here and you're not alone. And if you'd like to keep journeying with stories like this, like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to not miss the next touch. Thank you for staying all the way to the end.